So I want to let you know that this morning, Pastor Bruce Wall has joined me, and we also have Larry Nobles. Good morning, Larry.
Good morning. Good morning. It's good to be here.
Nice to have you. I remember when you used to do some work with Pastor Bruce many years ago.
Yes.
I do remember that. I do
Yes.
remember that. So that is good. So what do you have on your mind, Pastor Bruce?
There were a couple of things that I thought we should and could talk about. Some of those is not allowing people to cause us to experience a lot of pressure in our lives, which goes into our circulation system and could cause us to have high blood pressure, just be in trouble physically. Number one. Number two, having Larry here would be very instructive. I don't know how much he can talk about the ride, because I wanted to talk about what happened on Sunday with you and see if he has any suggestions to offer us with regards to the ride. And then we'll just let the broadcast organically go wherever it's going to go after that. How does that sound for you?
Well, I realize that you're also implying that whatever happens to us in a negative way affects our medical selves. So I think that's important for people to know who are listening and watching the broadcast.
Well, Sunday, when I saw the anxiety beginning to rise in your heart and your thinking regarding what had happened to you, I was concerned that you were sitting out in the sun for an extended period of time, waiting for the ride, and it was really, really getting to you, and you were willing to actually hire a taxi to take you home, which would have cost you, let me see, $79, $80, $100 or so to go from the church to where you live. I was concerned, and I was trying to let you know that everything was going to be okay. But I think you had already made that anxiety turn, and there was no way of turning that off until the lift showed up, sent by the ride, and all of a sudden you relaxed because you had your way home. So do you want to bring Larry into the discussion and tell Larry what happened on Sunday?
I also want to add something, because on Sunday and this morning, I got a message from the ride. They assumed that I did not have a ride home on Sunday, and they wanted me to explain what happened. And what I told them was that I did get a ride, that a second person showed up with the lift and did take me home. So I didn't get home until 2:00 in the afternoon from 12 o'clock when I expected to be picked up. But I got picked up later. So that's what happened, Larry.
And Larry, we're not turning to you like you're the expert on the ride, but just because you're here and you know a little bit about it, Louise, could you explain more fully what happened and what I was seeing in you during the time that you were waiting?
Well, I was anxious because the other two members of our church who also have the ride got the ride, and they were gone. They had left the building and they were on their way home. And I was still waiting for my ride, and I had come in at 8:30 in the morning. So to come in for the Bible study with Pastor Greaves. And I wanted to understand why, if they brought me in and had me arrive on time at 8:30 in the morning, why they didn't pick me up at 12 o'clock and to take me home, which was supposed to happen.
And so when usually after service, Sister Edna will sit with Louise and just stay here until the ride comes and picks up Louise. It's like one senior taking care of the other senior. I couldn't do the same thing that Edna did because I'm not as old as Edna and Louise.
What does that have to do? Okay.
So you know what I mean? I can't fit into that fraternity, that sorority that they have. But anyway, I was concerned because it just seemed like her blood pressure was rising because she decided to leave the church and go outside down the ramp, and then sit out in the sun waiting for transportation to show up. And I was concerned about her sitting in the sun. I was concerned about her saying that they're not going to pick me up. Could you get me a taxi? Now, Louise, you ought to know that I would not have allowed you to take a taxi. I would have put you in my car and I would have drove you home to where you live, even if it took 3 hours for me to get you there, because every 10 minutes I got to pull over and take a nap, wake up, and then go the next 10 minutes. The other thing, Larry asked Louise why, unlike most people, when they're in a lift or in the ride, they sit in the back. Louise refuses to sit in the back. Louise, where do you want to sit when you're in the ride?
My preference is to sit in the front seat with the driver.
So she tells the driver says, "Get in the back, lady." She goes, "No, I'm sitting in the front. Move all your stuff out." Why do you want to sit in the front, Louise?
Because I have a problem with my vision now, which is why I had to sell my automobile and I'm no longer driving. I have I have some glaucoma. And so sitting in the front seat is good for me because it allows me to see the direction that the driver is heading in the event they need some assistance from me to get home. So I want to do, I try to do that and ride in the front seat. And it almost always allows, they almost always allow me to do it.
Mhm.
She has she has a capacity to be able to compel the driver to do what she says. I don't know if I would get away with I'm sitting in the front. No, sir, you're in the back. Okay, I want to get home. So are you familiar? Do you know anything about the ups and downs of the ride at all, Larry?
Well, the time I worked there, the folks who lived out in Hull, because it was based over in Reedville,
Okay,
which is
in
a
Hyde
little,
Park area.
yes, further down. So technically we all wanted to stay around where we lived so we can get home quicker, maybe on a break, go home. So when folks lived out in Hull or Weymouth, in that direction, they would always try to group them together and try to get them there on time. Getting there on time was not really an issue, especially if it was early in the morning. But on getting them home at a reasonable hour, I don't think the T really understands folks who need dialysis and doctor's appointments and seniors with other things that may be on them, can't sit around for long periods of time. So when we would go get them after these dialysis appointments and other appointments, they're ready to go. Some of them can't even walk. They're so drained. So you have to go get them. It takes time. You can't rush people. But they have to set it up accordingly. So they try not to set up everybody's appointment at the same time, but you can't help that. Some people get out at 3, the other person gets out at 3. One lives in Weymouth, one lives in Hull. You get Weymouth first because it's on the way out to Hull, and then you would drop accordingly on the way back. Most of the time with work, they try to thin it out. Remember, this is well before the pandemic. And we had plenty of drivers who pretty much you could do it. You had more drivers. When it came to Sundays, was harder because everybody wanted to go to church pretty much at the same time.
Mhm.
But most of them went to church in the city, so they were close by. They lived close by. But on rare occasions, you would get somebody who lives out in Weymouth who goes to church in Roxbury or Dorchester. So they would have to figure that out. And then don't let it be inclement weather, especially the snow. It's really bad in the snow and the rain, the freezing rain and icy roads. They would almost encourage the person to cancel the appointment or going to church because it's too dangerous for the driver to get out there. I don't know why it's the way it is. I could imagine maybe they don't have enough drivers, enough quality drivers. So they have to spread them thin. That's why you have to wait an extra hour. What if you went grocery shopping and you have perishables and you wait, and time you get home, your ice cream is melted, things that need to be frozen or thawed out. It happens all the time. I don't know the answer to it. I just know it does happen. Not a lot, but enough. So if you're sitting around in the hot sun for an hour and a half, that's enough. That's one time is too many times because somebody who's older or has a condition sitting around outside in the hot sun is not a good thing.
Yeah, it's
So
not.
I think the T, I think it has to be more sensitive towards it. Yeah, you can call and complain about it, but it's probably not going to change. It's probably going to still be get to church real early or get home real late, one or the other.
What's one of the things, Louise, that and Larry, that I do not understand is if they cannot send Louise or any senior citizen or any person who uses the ride a ride truck or ride van, they'll go to Lyft or they'll go to the other competitor. Doesn't that cost them extra money when they have a Lyft come to the church? They're charging obviously more than the actual ride. How are they able to pay that expenditure to put someone in a Lyft?
I believe just like the T, when you get on the bus or the train and you don't have the fare, they're not telling you can't ride. It's your decision if you want to ride or not. So the government has already given the T the money for it. So it's not like your 170 is going to break the bank. It's not. That's for the fare to ride the bus. So whatever they charging the customer to ride the ride, they've already been paid for it. So for them to come out and subcontract to Uber or Lyft, the money's already there. It hurts them more because they have to come out of their pocket more. It's almost, I can't imagine how much it is. It sounds like it's almost double the amount if they just went with the ride, as opposed to them calling up the Lyft and trying to get somebody there. They're also liable for it. They're also liable for each customer. So each customer is guaranteed a ride there and back safely. So if they didn't come through, that's a liability. So they have to come through. Thank God for Lyft and Uber, for them to be there, because apparently the ride can't do it all. They don't have enough drivers to do it.
Right.
Qualified.
Right. And I didn't know until, Louise, Anita Hamilton shared with us that she can get an Uber or a Lyft through the T. You have so many rides a year or so many rides a month. I had no idea that was available to assist people.
Mhm.
But when you book a ride with the ride, you can't say I want an Uber or a Lyft. You have to take the ride truck. The Uber or the Lyft is only available if they can't provide a van. Is that how it works, Louise and
Well,
Larry?
they, they can provide either the van or the automobile, because my walker that I use folds up and fits in the back seat, right where someone usually sits. So that's not a problem. Sometimes it's the van and sometimes it's just a smaller vehicle that they pick me up. But they do tend to offer to take me an hour or two earlier in the morning than my preference. If I say I want to get to the church by 8:30, oftentimes they tell me that I have to be downstairs to be picked up at 6:15 a.m. because they've decided to take me to my church earlier, which is a problem because I might be the only one in the building. But that happens sometime because my preference is to be in my church that I've been attending for 30 years. So I don't mind if I have to do that, but occasionally it is difficult for me to get downstairs by 6 o'clock in the morning on Sunday to get picked up and taken to church. And then when I get to church and I'm there before Sister Edna and Pastor Bruce walks in and he says, "What are you doing here so early?" It's because they brought me, and I choose to allow them to do that because I don't have a second choice. There's no
Right.
second choice.
That reminds me, when I did drive for the ride, if the person was elderly, or let's say you drop somebody off, you just couldn't just drive off. Technically, you're supposed to make sure they get in the building. So if you didn't have keys and if you weren't who you were in the standing of the church, you'd be sitting outside until somebody came. And they're not supposed to do that. Again, they're liable for that. So I'm not saying you made a mistake, but you probably should have said, instead of saying that's okay, you probably should have said, no, I don't want that. Maybe an hour beforehand is okay, but not 2 hours beforehand. So now you've allowed them to pick you up and drop you off 2 hours early. Because I've had people say, there's nobody here. How do I get back home?
Right.
And so now you got to make another phone call to Central, and then they figure stuff out. So you just have to sit there until maybe sometimes people get it wrong. They're trying to go to let's say they go to a conference and the conference is not until next week, and now you're there, and we're just going to drop you off. No, you have to stay there, stay in the vehicle, make arrangements to drop everybody else off, and then we'll probably take you back home.
Louise, if that happened that you went to an appointment and you went on the wrong day, you wouldn't know that until you actually went into the building, took an elevator to the second floor. By that time, the ride has gone. So you'd have to pick up the phone right there and call and ask for another ride. Has that ever happened to you, Louise?
No, it has not. It has never happened to me. And I have always, when they change my time and make it earlier for a pickup, I accept it because I know that they will not give me a second choice ever. And they always tell me that they don't have enough drivers. And there was one time I was actually shocked when they asked me if I was willing to work for them and drive other people.
Why
And I
did
said, I said, do you know how old I am? And they said, that doesn't matter, lady. We need drivers.
Wow.
Larry, are they that desperate?
I listen, don't keep asking me. I guess the ride is that desperate. If they're gonna ask the client, hey, you want to, they should just deliver you a ride car
Right.
and you can make all the pickups and drop offs on the way back and forth to church. That's crazy to me.
But when you think
Yeah.
about it, though, back in the day, Louise, when Larry and I were going to 12th Baptist Church, Reverend Haynes had the vision
Uh-huh.
to purchase a van, then another van. Then he purchased a bus, a small little bus that would carry. His focus was really picking up the seniors,
Right.
and so there were vans and that little bus were going all over the city and outside of the city to pick people up. Today, with the cost of insurance for commercial insurance, and the cost of a van, some of the churches do not have those resources. So Larry, I'm saying more, we have 3 people who now take the ride. And
Mhm.
I'm sure we're gonna see more of that happening because quite frankly, it costs the member of the church $3 or $4 to go one way. That's not a bad deal, the amount of
Right.
money that they're paying. I think it's insignificant money. And to be honest with you, I was talking to Karen before I leased this automobile that I have to say, why don't I just take the ride to the church or to my doctor's appointments, and I'll take your car when you're not using it because it would be cheaper. But I decided to wait a little longer. This lease that I have is for 3 years. And my plan and my thinking is after the 3 years that this will be my last lease. I'll see if the ride will work for me. Louise, it is working for you though, isn't it?
It is working. That there's only been on 2 occasions that I've had a problem. One was that I was downstairs waiting from 6:15 a.m. to 7 a.m. and no vehicle came. And so I had to file a complaint and go back home, walk upstairs, just go take the elevator upstairs. Another time was waiting Sunday when you were standing outside with me saying, wait a minute, don't call a taxi. Let's see if we can get someone, the ride to come and get you. And those were the 2 problems I had in all of the months that I've been traveling with them. So it's really not bad considering that they charge $3.38 in each direction, 16 miles in
You
each
can't beat
direction.
that. You can't beat that.
That's amazing. It's amazing. So I struggle with it sometimes, and other times when I used to make an appointment with family to see them after church someplace, I can't do that any longer because I know that it might not happen. I might not get home until 2 hours later. But I do manage to get home on the
because
ride.
because this is mental health in your neighborhood, the stress level is really where I wanted to go today.
Right.
So
Right.
Larry, have you ever had a circumstance or circumstances that caused the level of stress in you to rise? And could you control it, or did it like take over you?
You talking about
The
a
level of
ride, right?
stress. No,
No,
not
no,
the
right.
right, just
Okay.
stress, just
In my
a
life,
level of in your life. Yeah.
oh yeah, several times. Several times. Yeah, I felt like, okay, you can't talk to anybody. You're just there by yourself. And sometimes you even think God has, like turned his back, because you're feeling you're overwhelmed with um, your situation, your emotions and your pain. You just don't see any way out. But somehow God was able, even in those times, to to really draw closer to me
Mhm.
and to get me. He talks to me in certain ways. I'm sure he talks to you, but there are certain times he talks to me like, as like my father would say, like, stop being a knucklehead. I told you I got this. You know, just listen to me. Just listen. Sometimes I don't want you to do anything. And there are times when he starts talking to me and be like, son, relax. I got you. I told you I got you. I took you. I remember I delivered you from that
Mhm.
and the other situation and the other situation and the other situation. And
Mhm.
sometimes they're not my choices. Sometimes it's just situations that happen that you find yourself in the middle of. But in no time did I ever feel that I'm gonna take my life. In no time. And I thank God for that. I never got to that point where I'm like, I might as well just end it right here and now.
Mhm.
There was always that light inside and that voice, and I praise God for that. That said, okay, just let me sit down and shut my mouth. Well, what are you trying to say to me?
Mhm.
And all the time, he's come through. Not when I always wanted him. I always wanted to hear that. Um, and there were times when he told me, I give you free will. You decided to do what you wanted to do. Now you deal with the consequences. You feel it. Now, you rather feel that or the peace that comes with being obedient?
Mhm.
And I'm gonna stick with the latter. So hopefully, I'm gonna make sure that I'm not ever in that position again in my life. I'm not saying I've been in recently. I haven't. And I thank God for that. I'm never gonna go back there. And I'm teaching my kids,
Mhm.
you know, you don't have to get to a point where you don't know what to do, you're depressed, and you don't have that. We have God. There's no excuse for any of that. But there
Mhm.
were times, yes, I'm sure we've all been through the times when,
Yes.
but
Yes.
thank God for his mercy and his grace and the Holy Spirit that's always with us, you know. And I start thinking about that, why he died, so we can have the Holy Spirit. That's powerful to have that. And I didn't start tapping into that until maybe about 5 years ago. I'm like, what is going on? What is that? And um, unlike Pastor, I realized why I cry so much. It's that when it talks about that fire that wells up inside of you, that's what that is. So my tears are not that I'm sad and all this other stuff. It's because the Holy Spirit manifests itself in my life that way. I start crying, and I'm not trying to control it anymore. I'm
Mhm.
actually embracing it, and I'm glad it's still there, and it's grown. God wants to use that in me, and He gave me that, um, and it's powerful. It's absolutely overwhelming, and it's powerful. There's no words for it. Sometimes that's why He says, "You can come to me in groans. I know what you mean, son." And yeah, so that's where I'm at.
I've experienced anxiety and pressure,
Hmm.
and I thank God that I have a relationship with God through Christ, because
Mhm.
I would not know what I was going to do or what to do if I didn't have a relationship with God and know that He's never going to leave me, He's never going to forsake me. The key thing is to forsake me. Um, the pressure, the pressure that I'm under now, just making decisions about the remaining time in my life. I'm looking at the next 10 years or the next 15 years if Jesus tarries. What is my life going to be like? What is my life going to be like without the church? What is my life going to be like
Mhm.
without having the team with me and around me as I've had for 30 years? So there's a little stress, there's some anxiety that tries to get in the middle there. And then I just have to pull back and say, this I have to trust God with all that I'm feeling. I have to trust God with the church. This is his church, it's not mine. And I never knew at the beginning of this ministry that I would be 30 years later trying to make that decision as to how to say goodbye to people, how to you got to develop a whole new lifestyle.
Mhm.
Getting up on Sunday mornings and preparing bulletins and all the things that I've been doing. So I wanted to talk about this because allowing the stress and anxiety, living with it, can cause a lot of problems in your body. That level of pressure, and I saw that level of pressure beginning to well up in you, Louise, on last Sunday, and
Right.
it bothered me because not that you don't have a right to stress and have anxiety, you'll be upset, but it bothered me because it's not good for people like you and I'm probably 2 years younger than you, but it's not good for us to allow stress and anxiety to dominate us, control us, or to even be anywhere around us, because it could do damage to our lives, our bodies, our hearts, seizures. All those things could be a byproduct of living with anxiety. And I didn't know how to quiet you down, other than because even if I said last Sunday, Louise, I'll take you home, it sounded like that was going to cause some anxiety for you because there are people like Edna who refuse to ride with me because she doesn't feel that I'm the most I'm the safest driver on the road. And I didn't want you to feel that level of anxiety of me having to drive you home. Pastor Wall, why are you sleeping while you're driving? Can you pull over? Can you pull over and take a nap?
The last time you drove me home, Pastor, you took one of your sons with you.
Oh, okay.
And he sat in the back seat.
Okay.
And I sat in the front seat with you, and he sat in the back seat. So I think you brought him for a special reason, so that you would know that he would keep a watch on you. And that happened, so it worked out fine. And I didn't really want you to drive me home because it's out of your way, but I was concerned about Sunday because I had been told that I had a ride, and then it didn't happen. And then there was no ride, and then I called 3 different times, and finally a driver did come and took me home, who had never driven to Hull. So I had to, sitting in the front seat, I was able to tell her which right, which left, and where to go to get me home. And she was fine after that.
What I didn't understand that, Larry. So last week, the lady that picked up Louise had her phone and the GPS, and she had the map, and why she couldn't use that to find her way to Hull completely. When Louise said that she had to give her directions, it would make me feel that that person is not that competent if you can't put the information in your phone, which you had already up on your car. That's how you found us, And
But don't they have? Oh, that was a Lyft. That was a Lyft driver.
Yeah.
Yes, it was a Lyft.
Yeah, because of the ride, all their vehicles have what we call a transit master, I believe it's called. That's what we call it on the T, and it tells you how to get to point A and point B. It's not always 100%, but most of the time it's pretty good. So that was just somebody. A lot of people they want to do the Lyft and Uber, but they're not familiar with the street, and they're not familiar how to follow the GPS on the phone.
Right.
They're not comfortable with it.
She wasn't worried about it. She was just pleased that I was able to direct her.
Yeah. Hey, senior, help. Hey, senior, help me to get you home. I see.
Yes. And it was fine to get home. And what was good about everything in my church is that Sister Edna, when she's there, which is usually every Sunday, she calls to make sure that I got home all right. She calls to make sure that my problem with getting to church was transportation and not any medical problem. She always wants to know how I'm doing medically. And that's a good thing too, that she does with other members of our church.
Well, Louisa, I also want you to know that Larry used to broadcast over at WEZE a number of years ago, where Louise would come to WEZE with me on Saturdays, and she would answer the phone. That's how we started this kind of ministry.
Yes,
But
yes.
Larry was with a group of young men. They called themselves the Men of Messiah, if I'm correct.
Yes.
It was Larry Santos, Michael Allwood, and Saladin Wise. Was it just the four of you?
Oh, then I think Derek came on.
And Derek,
Derek.
yeah,
Yeah.
Derek.
He came off of.
Was Derek's last name Williams? Was it Derek Williams? Do
It
you
probably
remember?
still is. It probably still is Williams. Yeah.
Okay, so the five of them had their own broadcast once a week at WEZE, and surprise, surprise, it was a very popular broadcast, Louise.
Yeah, I know. I listened to it a couple of times.
Oh, yeah. It was. It was really. The only issue was it was so late at night, all the way down. Well, you know where it is. Down that by the
Quincy Bay.
Quincy Bay, yeah, way down there. And after a while, but I'm not going to talk about that. The positives were. Go ahead. I'm sorry, sis.
But the pastor also did a broadcast from Quincy Bay as well, because I used to drive over there.
Yes. That was during the day?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah, we would go, I think it was at 10 or 11 o'clock at night.
It's 11 o'clock at night, yeah. 11 to 12.
So it was a time for us it was great for a group of men from the same church, serving the same God, and they come together, and everybody had their turn. Each broadcast was somebody else took the lead. It was awesome. We learned a lot about each other, and what ministry was all about. It wasn't just. I think this is the time when Pastor Bruce was. We had Global Ministries Christian Church. It changed the name. I'm not going to go back to the other name.
Right.
Changed the Global Ministry, and that was part of the mission of the church. And this is, it's funny how things click. I don't always get things right away. I'm like, why is Pastor changing it? And then the whole push. It started with BNN. We did the radio, and next thing you know, here we are, global. And doing it, and then WEZE was a way for us to again get the message out globally, and it was awesome because we had people from around the country, calling in on a regular basis.
We do have listeners from outside of the United States as well. So Pastor Bruce has done a great deal locally compared to the way it was when you and the men were together.
Yes.
That was great. That was great. And now this is becoming better.
Yes, it really is.
I'm so pleased to have Pastor Bruce as well as my brother Larry on my broadcast on Wednesday. That's a great thing for me. Thank you.
No, thank you for allowing me to be here. It's been an experience for me, and it's actually a good welcome back. You welcome me back into the fold, and I appreciate that.
Right.
The other thing, Louise, is that we set up one of our broadcasts at the Taste of Eden restaurant on Saturdays, and Larry and I were just getting into adding the TV portion to the audio, to the radio. And so
Uh-huh.
we had to Larry had to bring equipment. He had to bring the camera. We had to bring a little box so we can connect to the studio. It was growing. It was getting bigger. And then we decided that we were going to invite people. We set up tables and we were going to invite people to come and order a meal while the broadcast was going on. We tried every conceivable thing we could try to make the broadcast interesting and to make it different. But it was a lot of equipment. It was a lot of work we had to do that on Saturdays. And then on Sundays in church, we were one of the few churches in the city that was streaming on Sunday mornings, just streaming. We were streaming the sound, and then we started streaming so people could watch us. It was phenomenal how this thing was growing. Every single year it grew. Remember that, Larry?
Oh, I remember it. I remember getting to church early, staying late, prayer meetings. Every time there was an event, the concerts that we were having. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
God has really.
I remember you were doing it because I had to go home and cook a meal for 25 people. That's what I used to do on the weekend.
Wow.
That was your family, right?
My family, yes. I would cook for my family, yes.
There was one time I came to your house, me and Saladin and a few others. I forget who else was there. But we came, you cooked us one of your famous Italian meals, the whole shebang, all of it. There was so much food and it was so good, so authentic. Oh my goodness.
Yeah,
Missed
I know.
I don't remember that because I wasn't invited. I wasn't invited to. So this is mental health in your neighborhood. I feel stressed now. I feel stressed. So
you feel lonely.
So right. So it was you and Saladin. Oh, who else would go for dinner that you didn't tell me about and invite me?
I don't know if it was just the guys.
I think it was
Sister Lauren. Maybe it was just the guys. I think that Michael was there, myself. I think maybe Derek. It was a few of us. It was
right.
It was a lot of food.
Yeah.
It was good.
Well, I always cooked. I always cooked for a large number of family, and then when I was cooking for the church, that was my other family that I was cooking for.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well,
and it was good. It was good to have the family there.
Well, you're going to have to make up for all of those times when I wasn't invited with you and Larry and Saladin. And now I'm hearing it wasn't just him and Saladin. I'm hearing that it was a group of you who were meeting. So I don't know how I was left out. Let me just say it that way.
I think that I asked you to attend and you said you couldn't because you had something to do with your family.
Something more important. Yeah.
So that's your statement, and you're gonna keep it.
Yes.
That way.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Well,
that was a good answer, Sister Louise. Good answer. I like it.
So, Larry, the last thing I'll say about some of the history with Louise and I, some of the things that people said is that Reverend Haynes told me that he would listen and watch our broadcast on BNN because he liked the friendship that we had. And he felt that the city, because I've heard of some other people, that the city needed to see a Black man and a white woman engaging, talking about life and politics and all of those things, and that we could go anywhere in our discussions because the bottom line is that we were friends. Right. And again, Louise and I didn't really see all of that. We didn't see everything that people were seeing, but we just did what we did because we loved what we were doing, right?
Yes,
Louise?
Yes, I enjoyed it. I remember crossing the street in Roxbury and having people stop in their automobile and say, "What are you doing here in Roxbury?" And I was walking across the street with you.
Well, again, it spoke to the city, what we were doing and how we were doing it, because we did BNN. I think it was every Wednesday. So we did,
Yes,
we did EZE Monday through Friday. We did EZE on Saturdays at the restaurant. We did BNN on Wednesdays. Every Wednesday we'd go to BNN. We started
Right.
downtown. Then we ended up coming up into, well, not Forest Hills, but that Washington Street, Eggleston
Right.
Square, Eggleston Square. But again, there's been a lot. And Louise, I don't know if you remember, Larry, I'm sure does. We had a broadcast up in Chelsea. There's a
Yes.
radio station in Chelsea.
yes,
that
I
we-
do remember. Yes,
I think I went there on Saturdays. So I did Saturdays in Chelsea
right,
in the afternoon. Then I did Saturday nights at Hoper's Restaurant or at EZE. We were doing a lot. And then we went to Cambridge and we
Right.
went to WRCA in Cambridge and we did that. And then Larry, we got a couple stations outside of the city that I was sending broadcasts to. So we've been doing this for a long, long time. When people come into the studio and they see the setup and they watch us, they're touched and fascinated, but they don't understand that this has been a long journey, right? This has been a journey that we have been on, officially 2010, but we were on doing this at the church with our equipment well before 2010. And
absolutely.
Larry was, Louise, when you were the treasurer, I'm going to tell the truth. Larry was the one who was buying all the cameras. I wasn't buying them. It was Larry. And he not only purchased the cameras, he got cases for it. He got all kinds of things that he spent the church's money on. I can tell you that now.
Pastor, remember the days?
I think I wrote checks for him.
Yes.
Remember the days when we would come to church, get here early, and then we have to run down to what was that, Field's Corner, to go to Radio Shack, and then try to piece together this, that, and the
all
other.
the stuff.
Oh my goodness. And I was working for that cable place, and I was able to get all these cables and stuff. Remember the 12-foot what is it called? VCA, whatever, cords. I mean, I did a lot. Yeah, we did a lot together.
There was
But
a lot, right, to step into this.
Yeah, I wanted to say
And
it's
and
amazing.
I had
Oh.
recently one Sunday after service, a man came to me and he said, I have been listening to you and Pastor Bruce on your broadcast. Why don't you speak in the church? And I said, I'm not invited to speak in the church because the pastor has other things developed for the sanctuary service and preaching. And I said, I'm glad that you listened to me. And he gave me his business card, and it was Bill Wright, who is a political and media consultant. And he gave me his card at the church and said, I want you to know that I'm very pleased to listen to you and Pastor Bruce on your broadcast.
Now, doesn't Bill Wright attend the church now?
Yes, he does. Yes, but some Sundays he doesn't because he goes other locations. But it's very interesting that he does that. And there's also that woman in Australia that watched us, and
Right.
maybe she's watching us today.
I hope so.
Yes,
Larry, you were
she's a
going to
lovely
say?
Ibina. She's a lovely woman. Very nice.
You know, when I, just now, I took the time just to look back on all the years when when God put this on you, Pastor,
Mhm.
to not put limits on the church. And when you started off the changing of the name, that was just the beginning. You ought to always, if something needed to be happen in the, if something needed to happen in the church, you would always say, this is practice. So if we needed a radio station, you would put a radio up there. Pastor Karen, thank God, didn't allow you to put a toilet up there.
Toilet up there
When
to
we
do a
need,
new bathroom, yeah.
yeah, I remember all that. But the bottom line is, from somebody on the, I wouldn't say the outside looking in, but to see where God has gave you a vision, his vision, and for you to just even till now to see it through, to make
Yes,
sure that
yes,
it's global. And if nothing else, you're doing your obedience.
Mhm.
You can see how the harvest that you have sown into is coming to fruition. I mean, I don't know if people tell you this all the time, but I'm telling you right now, I see it. I see what God is doing in your life, and I see what God is doing through Global Ministries Christian Church. I
yes,
thank God for you, Pastor.
yes.
I really do, and I love you. I can say that now. I know you can't, but I can. But yeah, so keep up the work. Keep up the work.
Yeah,
It's not done yet, and I appreciate you. We say this on the job all the time. I appreciate you. I really do. I really
yes,
do.
yes, yes. And I appreciate my pastor and my friend as well.
Yes.
See, that goes a long way to helping others and to understand why the decision to transition out is such a difficult one,
Mhm.
because you have to ask the question, not respecting your age, is your work done? Is there anything, one of the things that I said, we have about 2 minutes left. One of the things that I said to myself is that I've got to help lead the church through COVID. I can't leave in the middle of COVID. I've got to help the church through COVID.
Mhm.
Then when we once we came out of the COVID, then we had all this renovations that's going on. And I said, okay, let me stay long enough to get us through the renovations of the church that we're going through right now.
Mhm.
So it's going to be interesting to see me on the other side of making this decision regarding when I'm transitioning. And the big question is, what am I going to do once I transition? Am I going to be an associate at another church with less responsibility? Am I going to be involved in media? Is this going to be where I'm going? So there's a lot for me to pray about and process, because I really need to hear what God is going to say to
Mhm.
me about the rest of my life. Because now I don't look at, some people look at their lives and they say, well, I have 50, 60 years to do this and do that. I'm looking at it differently. I may have 10 years
Mhm.
left to do some of this work. In 5 years, Larry, 5 years, I'll be 80. Can you believe that? 80 years old, the youth pastor? That's crazy.
Yes.
So, Louise, this is your program. And because it's your program and Larry and I are guests on your program, you always have the last word.